Hi, this is Larry Greenblatt, and I have another tip for you for your studying for your CISSP. Today we're going to talk about the Code of Ethics, and I'd like you to pass the exam, but a knowledge of this I think will also help us all defend the world from what I think is the biggest existential threat of our time. And a little tip for what I'm talking about there, as a Star Trek fan, that some of you know, I am a big fan. Captain Kirk is having a disagreement with an AI that got out of control through some accident. So let's talk about this. Now, the Code of Ethics canons are very testable. They used to have some complex scenarios throughout my almost 20 years of teaching this, but I understand for the last 2 years, the primary objective for any test taker is to understand the four canons and to understand the order. So they are resolved in this order. The very first thing we consider, we must protect society and the common good. Isn't that awesome? I love that. Yeah, I grew up in old movies and stuff, Robin Hood and all these other, noble warriors, and of course Star Wars. Yeah, and when I saw that, I've been in IT for almost 20 years, and I was teaching a Cisco class, and a guy showed me the CISSP, and I saw the Code of Ethics, and I was like, I want to do this. Yeah, yeah. Once that's solved, then we act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally. Then we provide diligent and competent service to our principals. And if all that can be solved, then least important, but very important, is to advance and protect the profession, which I hope I'm doing here, and I hope I do it well. I consider it an honor to be a CISSP. I hope I represent them well. And I believe very much in what they stand for, and particularly this code of ethics. Now, I've had debates in my class. If all you want to do, by the way, is pass the exam, you can stop. We're done. If you want to help save the world from what I think is the largest existential threat of our time, AI going out of control, stay tuned. So people have said the laws are important too, though. Why is that more important? Well, come on. A law like gravity affects everybody. It doesn't pick a favorite. It's not protecting white males, of European descent. No, no, no. The law should apply to everybody. That's when it applies for the common good. But some laws have not always done that. They've been heavily biased. For instance, in the United States, slavery was legal. That doesn't seem like it helps the common good. And, it was biased toward a certain, ethnicity of people, so and that's true everywhere. Don't just blame Americans. We're having problems right now where it's come to the forefront, where we have biased laws in the United States, and we have worse than that, sometimes misunderstood interpretations of how to enforce that law. So we've got a number of things. Like when you go to a restaurant, you have to understand first, do you know what you want? Does the waiter understand you? And did the cook understand what the waiter wrote down? There's a lot of places where misunderstandings take place. So if you've been in any of my classes, you might know where I'm going with this, and it relates to a development life cycle. But the hardest part of any development life cycle is understanding requirements. So as we develop laws, the requirements of a law really should be to protect the common good. And if we do that, I think we can mitigate these AI risks. So let me express just a little more. Tell you what I think, and you tell me what you think. I'd love some feedback. So, oh, by the way, I have another code of ethics I also adhere to. I'm a third-degree black belt under the late, great Joe Louis, the founder of American kickboxing. And he also felt something like that, too. I'm very proud of it. He said, I will not permit considerations of race, religion, national origin, or social standing to influence any way my relations with my students. So very much, the common good. And so I think we can all feel it's the do unto others. It's the golden rule. We all know it's the right way, right? We all know that's true. Now, every CISSP has to know that the first step in risk management is to assess your risk. The first step in assessment is to identify your risk, and that's to identify assets, threats, and vulnerabilities. And our assets right now for today, we're going to say every living creature, every living organism on this planet is threatened right now. And whether it's through global warming or if it's pollution. I can remember when I'm pretty old, I'm almost 60, and when it became a news bulletin, an alert, don't drink rainwater anymore in the United States. It's actually they call it acid rain. And it was sad for me. My mother explained it to me. I was all of like 8 years old, and I want the rain to get drinkable again, guys. I think we can do it. I think we could do it. But let's look at these threats of technology in general and AI at the top. Now, AI threats. Once we identify our assets, we look at our threats, and our threats could be natural or man-made. I'm going to go with AI is not natural. It's man-made threat. Man-made threats are intentional. Like in every AI movie, horror movie, the AI intentionally decides to wipe out humanity. I really don't worry about that. No, I worry about accidents. I worry about the waiter getting my order wrong. But when the human misunderstands you, the waiter will still bring me food. The failure will result in a human failure. When Alexa misunderstands me, she says the darndest things. No, AIs fail in very inhuman ways. And as they take over more and more of our lives, well, what vulnerabilities are we? Can't we just unplug them? No. No, we can't just unplug them. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I love, actually made a comment like that. You just shoot the robot. If they were not able to shoot Nomad, this out of control mistake that the Changeling was the name of the episode. Two AIs somehow mutated and came up with this horrible accident. Yeah, and that's a real risk that we will lose control. In fact, it's illustrated quite nicely in the book Superintelligent by Nick Bostrom. There's also a newer book, just came out this year, it's 2020, Competing in the Age of AI, where we talk, when we build a car, when you architect something, you need to put a control on it. And we know that in CISSP, prevent, detect, and responsive controls, right? But if the brakes can't slow the car down, you lose control of the car. If the car gets such a powerful engine, you won't have. And Ray Kurzweil believes that time period is in this decade. And he's a pretty bright guy. I'll let you research Ray Kurzweil. But I'm going with his number that right now we know that like Watson or whatever, so, Deep Blue, the specialized AIs are much better than humans in certain tasks. But by 2029, the assumption is that by artificial general intelligence, it'll generally be smarter than humans. And now it's the car's engine is too powerful for any brakes. But we don't control the ocean, right? Governance is not about controlling the ocean. You govern, which means to steer the ship. You control the ship. So there's hope is not lost. But there's the other problem, that laws aren't always fair. We have to re-engineer the laws. We have to make sure the AIs are going to learn from us. We have to make AIs understand the requirements of the common good of all humanity. AI, for instance, at Amazon didn't understand that, and they were hiring males because they didn't realize that females also make good candidates. So much for the common good, you can cut that in half, right? There's been a lot of problems like here, but this is not a new problem. If you're an AI researcher, stop thinking this is new. This is actually a problem we've had throughout history, mostly based on ignorance. Do you think the people in China, when they made the first laws, ignored the people in Israel because they were mean to my ancestors? Or it's because they just didn't know, right? As we become more knowledgeable, as we share more information, we can do this. We can solve this. There's good news. Now, Nick Bostrom points out one of the hardest parts about understanding requirements is the words. What words do you use? And he has some really good explanations. I don't want to get too deep, but it's hard to give a step-by-step instruction, procedures, and have them followed exactly right. The AI might go, oh, do you mean this? No, no, no. I meant a picture of a dog that you tied to a fence. Don't, I meant you to tie the dog to a fence, not take a picture of that. And then they misunderstand these words. So my favorite book on AI that came out this year is by Rana Al-Kayubi. I can't encourage people to read this book enough. It's my favorite book. It solves that problem of understanding requirements, because what she points out is so much of our expressions are not verbal. most of our expressions, in fact, we often feel at a loss for words, but the look on our face tells a different story. So she's developed emotive AI primarily by looking at our faces. We also make hand gestures and other physical postures that express our emotion regardless of language. And we're not just getting, the opinions of a few white male Europeans, but we're a trillion sensors. There's whatever 8 billion people on the planet right now, but we think there's 50 billion IoT devices. And I got friends who are paranoid. Larry, Alexa's always listening to you. And I was like, yeah, I know. So's your phone, dude. So Siri. I mean, I know there's Google, but I don't care. I want them to listen to me. I want them to know my opinion. This will help reduce the bias. I want AIs to say, I don't know, what would Larry think if we did that? But I also want to remove the bias from just don't just focus on one human, focus on all humans, but don't just focus on humans. And I think a lot of the problems, the other existential threats we're having in the environment, I mean, global warming and just pollution. I remember when you could drink rainwater, but when I was like 8 or so years old, it was a big bullet. My mom called me and explained to me, no, it's acid rain. They said with pollution, you can't do that. I believe we can do it again. I believe if we really develop the smart cities, and please read some books by Peter Diamandis too, who points out how much better the world has already gotten and how much better it's getting. As we take things that were scarce and make it abundant, and soon everybody won't have to compete for limited resources, but instead billions of human minds connected together, sharing information, right, with that wisdom of the crowd. The world's getting better, guys. I hope I hope you pass your test. One design goal, like I said, if we just keep in mind the common good, the common good, the common good, don't be biased. You know, it reminds me of something I read by one of my favorite scientists, and Buckminster Fuller had a basic ethic that I love, and I think we could close it here. That all these technologies, all your plans, what we do for a living should advantage all without disadvantaging any. And again, I don't want to just consider what Larry would want. I want the smart cities to consider what would the bears want? What would the beavers? What would the fish? What would the bees? What do the trees think about this? What about those mushrooms? Yeah. I want, and I think it's very doable. We have the technology. All right, that's all. By the way, it's a very tough time. It says again, 2020. I'm assuming probably not even halfway through the COVID pandemic. It's been very brutal here in the United States, and who knows where it is around the world yet. But so, if you'd like to sit in my class and you're having a problem during these difficult times, please write us, and we'll send you an invoice. But after 12 months, it's still you find you can't pay, don't worry about it. I want to see you in my class. I do have to charge for the recordings. I got to make a living somehow. I've been affected by this too. I hope you found this useful. And in the interest of the common good and in my Star Trek ethos, may you all live long and prosper.